A Werewolf Shifter Romance audiobook written by Catherine Stewart. Prologue. The lie had a sound. It was the whisper-quiet hum of a high-security server room, a sterile, cold sound that promised order, while it birthed chaos. Alistair Larkspur knew the sound intimately. For weeks, it had been the soundtrack to the death of his soul. His fingers, thin and trembling, flew across the surface of a datapad. He was an archivist, a keeper of truths, and he was currently crafting the most magnificent lie of his generation, a lie that would shatter a great house, ruin an innocent family, and pave the way for a monster to ascend. He was building a cage for the Onyxwood pack, and the bars were made of his own cowardice. Valerius's orders had been simple. Frame them, make their ruin look like the inevitable result of their own greed. Alistair had done it. He was good at his job after all. He had woven data and deceit together so seamlessly that no one would ever question it. No one but him. But then, he had done something else. Something stupid. Something brave. He had made a copy. Not of the lie, but of the truth. The real ledgers, the undoctored communications, the proof of Valerius's conspiracy. It was all there. A ghost in the machine. A poison pill waiting for the right moment. A moment Alistair knew he would never live to see. That's why he was here, in the dead of night, his heart a frantic bird against his ribs. He downloaded the ghost file into its final vessel, not a data chip, nothing so obvious. A locket. A simple silver locket shaped like a larkspur flower, the one he had planned to give his daughter for her next birthday. As if summoned by the thought, the door to his study slid open. His blood ran cold, but it wasn't Valerius's guards. It was her. Cora. His daughter, all of 7 years old, with her stormy gray eyes already holding a startling intelligence. She held a storybook in her hands. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice small in the big, quiet room. "You're supposed to be sleeping." He knelt down, forcing a smile that felt like cracking glass. "I know, little bird. I had one last story I needed to finish." He held out the locket. It gleamed under the cold light of the server racks. "And I have an early birthday present for you." Her eyes went wide. She took the locket, her small fingers tracing the delicate petals. "It's beautiful," a choked whisper. "It is. But it's more than that, Cora. It's a secret. A very, very important secret." He looked into her eyes, praying she would understand the weight of his words, even if she couldn't understand the meaning. "This isn't just a locket. It's a story, the most important story I've ever written. And you have to promise me. You have to promise me you'll keep it safe, that you'll never open it, not until you meet someone you trust with your whole soul. Do you understand?" She didn't understand the stakes, of course. How could she? But she understood a promise made to her father. She nodded, her expression serious. "I promise, Daddy." She clutched the locket to her chest. A single tear traced a path down Alistair's cheek. He had just handed his daughter a death sentence, or her only key to survival. He didn't know which. He was the last true archivist of the Larkspur line, and he was about to become a ghost. He hugged her one last time, breathing in the scent of her hair. And then, the door slid open again. This time, it wasn't his daughter. It was the men he had been expecting all along. Just like every other morning in this God's forsaken city, I stood on a steel beam 1,000 feet above the grime of Veridia's underbelly. The wind whipped at me, trying its best to rip me from my perch. Down below, glittering towers. The homes of the alphas who ran this world. The ones who had chewed up my family and spit out the bones. My bones. I was just a ghost, haunting their skyline. My own alpha strength, used to build monuments for my enemies. With simmering rage. It was a sick joke. My foreman, a doughy beta named Kale with a smug little twitch in his eye, barked an order through the comms. His voice was a needle, digging against the raw nerve of my pride. I just grunted. My knuckles white, I tightened a bolt. The muscles in my back coiled like springs. Useless power. Useless in a world run by credits and contracts. My inner wolf. It hadn't stirred in years. Just a cold, silent weight in my gut. A constant reminder of what I'd lost, what I'd failed to protect. After that, the rest of the shift was just a blur. Noise, sweat, another day in the cage. By the time I got back to my apartment, a concrete shoebox that always smelled of damp and despair, the exhaustion was a physical thing. A heavy cloak I couldn't shrug off. The only decoration was the flickering red light on my datapad. Blinking, taunting. It had been blinking for days. I didn't need to open it. I knew. But then something inside me just snapped. Maybe it was the foreman's sneer. Maybe it was the sight of another tower reaching for a sky I no longer felt a part of. A growl rose in my throat. I snatched the datapad. Final notice. Onyxwood territory assets to be seized by Valerius consolidated in 24 hours. The words blurred. My breath hitched. 24 hours. Just like that. The last echo of my family, the last piece of my soul and us would be gone. Swallowed by him. Valerius, the architect of my ruin. Despair was a cold, black ocean, and I was drowning in it. My wolf whimpered, a pathetic sound I hadn't heard since I was a boy. And then, a second message chimed. Not red this time. Green. Anonymous. My thumb trembled as I opened it. The words felt like a phantom whisper in the roaring silence of my apartment. The Larkspur Omega at tonight's auction. She is the key. Bid as if your name depends on it. Because it does. The name was like acid on my tongue. The family who had supposedly betrayed mine. The jackals who had helped Valerius pick the carcass clean. It had to be a trap. A cruel final joke before the end. And yet, what else did I have? Hope was a poison, but despair was a slow death. I chose the poison. That night, the cerulean auction felt like another planet entirely. The air was thick with the cloying perfumes of the city's elite. A sickening, sweet smell, trying to mask the rot underneath. I stood in the back, a shadow in my worn-out clothes. I drew condescending glances from alphas in tailored suits. They looked at me like I was something they'd scraped off their shoe. Good. Let them underestimate me. My entire life savings, every last credit scraped together from years of swallowing my pride, felt like a handful of dust in this room full of dragons. And then, she appeared on the stage. The world tilted. Time just stopped. She was small, dressed in simple white. She looked as fragile as spun glass. Her head was bowed, her scent masked by artificial lilacs. But beneath it, beneath the chemicals and the fear, I could smell it. Rain on old parchment. A scent of quiet strength and ancient secrets. And in that moment, the cold, silent thing in my chest woke up. It wasn't a thought. It was a physical impact, a force of nature. My inner wolf, a beast I had starved and shamed into submission for a decade, reared its head. It let out a deafening, soul-shattering roar that only I could hear. Mine. The word was a brand on my soul. My mind screamed, "No, she's a Larkspur, the enemy." But my body moved on instinct. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden silence of my mind. It was mate recognition, a fairy tale. A curse. And it was happening to me. Here. Now. The bidding started. A flurry of voices. Rich. Powerful. I barely heard them. All I saw was her. My wolf was pacing, a caged, desperate thing, clawing at the inside of my skin. Ours. Protect. Claim. The auctioneer's voice was a distant drone. Going once. Going twice. Before the words left his lips, my own voice ripped through the room. Raw, unfamiliar. I named a number, an impossible number, my entire life. Silence. Every head turned. A wave of shock, then derision, rippled through the crowd. I saw Marcus Valerius, up in his private box. And for a single, beautiful second, his mask of smug civility slipped. I saw it. The cold, reptilian fury in his eyes. The gavel fell. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the dead quiet. And just like that, everything changed. The moment the gavel struck, the world exploded into motion. Valerius's guards started moving, their expressions hard, purposeful. There was no time to think, only to act. Before anyone could stop me, I was moving, pushing through the stunned crowd. My body a battering ram of pure, focused intent. My wolf was at the surface, a wild, snarling thing, and for the first time in years, I let it have control. I reached the stage. Her scent, her real scent, hit me like a physical blow. Rain and parchment and a deep, trembling fear. Her wide, terrified eyes locked on mine. In the span of a breath, I saw it all. She wasn't a spoiled princess. She was a prisoner. Without another word, I grabbed her arm. Not gently. There wasn't time. "Come with me if you want to live," I growled, the words more wolf than man. She flinched, but she didn't fight. As if pulled by a string, her body followed mine. We plunged off the side of the stage into the service corridors behind it. The curated opulence of the auction hall gave way to bare pipes and humming electrical panels. The hunt was on. Her breaths came in short, panicked gasps beside me. Who are you?" she stammered, her voice a fragile thing in the echoing hallway. "The man who just bought you," I bit out, my voice harsher than I intended. The war inside me was raging. "Protect her," the wolf demanded. "She's the enemy," my mind screamed back. We burst out into a back alley, the city's perpetual rain instantly plastering her thin white dress to her skin. The neon lights of Veridia bled across the wet pavement, turning the world into a smear of purple and blue. She shivered, and despite everything, a fresh wave of protective fury surged through me. And then we heard it. Footsteps, shouts, the heavy thud of boots on pavement. "This way," I commanded, pulling her deeper into the labyrinth of the Undercity. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every distant sound made my hackles rise. We were prey, and the predators were closing in. Suddenly, she stumbled, a pained cry escaping her lips. She fell to her knees, her body racked with a violent tremor. It wasn't a simple trip. It was something else. Something wrong. I turned back, my frustration boiling over. "Get up. We don't have time for—" But then I saw her face in the ghostly neon light. Her skin was pale, beaded with sweat. Her eyes were glazed with a pain so deep it stole my breath. This wasn't weakness. This was an illness. Before I could move, she collapsed completely. Her body went limp in my arms, and deep down, I knew the truth. This was no simple omega. This was a secret wrapped in a mystery, and I had just tied my fate to it with chains of my own making. In the echo of her pained cry, her dead weight in my arms felt like an anchor, pulling me down into the same black ocean of despair I'd been fighting all night. Her skin was on fire, a feverish heat that seeped through my worn jacket, a stark contrast to the cold, biting rain. As the silence stretched, my own heartbeat was a frantic drum against my ribs. What had I done? This wasn't just a woman I'd bought on a mad impulse. This was a responsibility, a sick, dying responsibility, and deep down, I knew the truth. My wolf knew. This was my mate. My broken, fragile mate. A growl rose in my throat, a low warning to the shadows themselves. My goal was simple, primal. Find shelter, now. Because of that, my eyes scanned the derelict alleyways, the forgotten corners of this city that chewed people up. Not only that, the sound of boots was getting closer, sharper, more organized. These weren't just beat cops. Valerius's wolves were on the hunt. With every heartbeat, her breathing grew more shallow. Her scent, that intoxicating mix of rain and old secrets, was now tainted with the sharp, metallic tang of sickness. I had to move. My body moved on instinct, my legs pumping, carrying us deeper into the labyrinth of the Undercity. I found it moments later. An old, rusted-out maintenance hatch, half hidden behind a dumpster overflowing with the city's refuse. It smelled like decay and rust, but it was better than the open street. With a grunt of effort, I wrenched it open. The screech of metal on metal was deafening in the quiet alley. Without thinking, I lowered us both into the darkness below, pulling the heavy lid shut just as the beam of a patrol flashlight cut through the rain above. Darkness. It swallowed us whole. Absolute. The only sound was her ragged breathing, and the frantic thumping of my own heart. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth, of forgotten things. It was the smell of a tomb. And I had just locked us inside. Truth be told, I didn't know what scared her more, the men hunting us, or me. But as I held her close in the suffocating dark, her fever a living thing against my chest, another question began to haunt me. Who was the anonymous tipper who sent me to that auction? And why did they want me to find her? It was a hook, a loose thread in a tapestry of lies, and I knew pulling it could unravel everything. That night, we found ourselves in a forgotten transit station, a ghost of a place deep beneath the city's skin. The only light came from phosphorescent moss that grew in eerie green patches along the damp concrete walls, casting long, dancing shadows. It felt like a crypt, our crypt. I laid her down on a dusty, discarded bench, using my jacket as a pillow. Her body still trembled, caught in the grip of whatever poison was running through her veins. As the silence roared, my wolf paced restlessly inside me. Protect. Warmth. Ours. I built a small fire in a rusted barrel. The flames pushed back the oppressive dark. For the first time, I could really see her. Her face, even pale and etched with pain, was perfect. Her dark lashes rested against skin that looked as soft as moonlight. Her lips were parted slightly, a soft sigh escaping them. As if pulled by a string, I reached out, my rough fingers hesitating just above her cheek. The space between them burned with a strange energy. My soul answered a call I didn't know it had been waiting for. This was my mate. No matter how hard I tried to deny it, my very bones remembered her. Come morning, her eyes fluttered open. They were the color of a stormy sky, wide and filled with a wary intelligence. Her voice, when it came, was a trembling whisper. Where are we? Safe. For now, I said, my voice a low rumble. I handed her a canteen of water I'd found. What's wrong with you? Is it a sickness? Her gaze darted away. A flicker of something, not fear, evasion. I don't know. I've been unwell for a while. Unwell doesn't make you collapse in an alley, I pressed, my tone harder than I intended. The lie was so obvious, my wolf bristled. Why was she hiding things? What was she so afraid of? The men hunting us? They're Valerius's. Why does he want you so badly? As the silence stretched, she looked at me. Really looked at me. Her eyes traced my face, my worn clothes, the hardened lines around my mouth. A beat later, her voice trembled, but with a newfound strength. He wants what my father left me, and he will kill anyone who gets in his way. And what's that? I asked, leaning closer. Before the words left her lips, she looked away again. I don't know if I can trust you. Your scent. It's Onyxwood. My family always said the Onyxwood pack was savage. That you were traitors. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Traitors. The lie Valerius had built his empire on. The lie that had destroyed my world, and this woman, my mate, believed it. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Between them, something cracked. The fragile hope I didn't even know I was holding. Shattered. Despite that, I didn't rage. The anger was there, a hot coal in my chest, but her accusation was delivered with such genuine programmed belief that it felt sad. She was a victim of the same lies I was, which meant we were in this together, whether I liked it or not. Instead, I just grunted. A lot of things were said, most of them lies. I stood up, needing to put space between us before the bond pulsed again, demanding I close the distance. Stay here. We need food. The next few days fell into a tense rhythm. I would venture out, scavenging for supplies while she rested, her strength slowly returning. Yet her strange illness remained. It came in waves of fever and pain that left her weak and trembling. Deep down, she knew the truth about her condition, I was sure of it. But she guarded her secrets like a dragon guards its hoard. Maybe it was fate that had brought us together. Two broken pieces of a puzzle neither of us understood. To make things worse, Valerius's hunters were getting smarter. They weren't just corporate thugs. They moved with a chilling, predatory grace. They were shifters, tamed city wolves, neutered of their wild magic but still dangerous. It was an open loop. Another question without an answer. Why would Valerius, a supposed human supremacist, use werewolves as his enforcers? It didn't make sense. One evening, I returned to find our sanctuary violated. A patrol had come through. They hadn't found us, but the message was clear. A single dead lark had been left on the bench where she slept. A larkspur. A warning. As the sky darkened outside, her pulse raced. She didn't know what scared her more, the threat or the fury she saw in my eyes. With every step he took toward the dead bird, she felt the air thicken. "They know we're here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're toying with us," I growled, my own wolf pressing forward, a wave of raw, protective fury washing over me. In that moment, I made a decision. Hiding was no longer an option. We had to fight back. We had to become the predators. Without warning, a sound echoed from the far end of the tunnel, a low scrape, then another. Footsteps. Not the heavy tread of guards. Something lighter, stealthier. As if summoned, a figure emerged from the shadows. Not one of Valerius's hunters. This was someone new. A woman, cloaked and hooded, her face hidden in darkness. She stopped, her head tilted, as if listening to something only she could hear. Her voice, when she spoke, was like silk and steel. "Rhys of Onyxwood, I was told I would find you here." Before either could speak, the stranger's gaze flickered to Cora. A flash of recognition, and something else, something that looked dangerously like pity, crossed her features. "And you must be the key." Between one breath and the next, the air in our crypt thickened, charged with a new kind of danger. My body moved on instinct. I shifted, placing myself squarely between Cora and the hooded stranger. A low growl rumbled in my chest, a promise of violence. My wolf was on a hair trigger, every muscle coiled, ready to spring. This woman's scent was strange. Wild, yes, but layered with the city's ozone and something else. Something cold and calculating, like polished steel. It was the scent of a predator who hunted other predators. Her head tilted again. I could feel her gaze on me, even through the shadows of her hood. Unnervingly steady. Unafraid. "Peace, Onyxwood," she said, her voice smooth but carrying an undeniable edge of command. "If I were here to harm you, you'd already be bleeding." "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice a harsh rasp. "How did you find us?" She took a single deliberate step forward. "My name is Selena, and I found you, because it is my job to find lost things." Her gaze flickered to Cora, who was now sitting up on the bench, her eyes wide but watchful. "And she," Selena continued, a hint of something unreadable in her tone, "is the most valuable lost thing in this city." Skeptical. "The key," I repeated her word, my voice laced with suspicion. "The key to what?" What's worse, her presence felt like a trap. Another layer in a game I didn't understand. Because of that, my instinct screamed that this was a complication we couldn't afford. Was she the anonymous tipper from the auction? Or was she something else entirely? A different kind of hunter? Selena let the silence stretch, a calculated move to unnerve me. It almost worked. Eventually, she gave a slow, deliberate nod. Valerius doesn't just want to control the city's packs. He wants to erase them. He's been hunting old bloodlines for years, neutralizing their omegas, severing their connection to the wild magic. Her words landed like stones in the quiet station. She was confirming my worst fears, giving a name to the horror I'd only just begun to suspect. More importantly, her gaze fixed on Cora with a new intensity. Your mate carries the proof of his crimes, the ledger. But she is also the living embodiment of his greatest fear, a pure-blooded omega from an ancient line, one he failed to break completely. That's why he sent his tamed dogs after you, not just to reclaim his property, but to finish the job. The space between them burned with this new, terrible knowledge. Her sickness, her collapses. It wasn't just an illness. It was a symptom of something far worse. As the truth unraveled, a cold dread snaked its way around my heart. Selena's words painted a picture more terrifying than I could have imagined. This wasn't about land or money anymore. This was about extinction. What do you mean? Finish the job? I asked, my voice low. Selena finally pulled back her hood. Her face was sharp and intelligent, framed by dark hair streaked with silver. Her eyes were old. They held the weary knowledge of a long and brutal war. She looked like a general, not a scout. The suppressants Valerius has been forcing on her. They're not just for control, Reese. They're a poison. They're designed to slowly, systematically sever an Omega's connection to her own wolf, to the moon itself, to make her barren, a genetic dead end. My breath caught. I looked over at Cora. She had her arms wrapped around herself, her face pale beneath the moonlight filtering through a grate high above. The tremors, the fever. It was her body fighting a war against itself. Her wolf, caged since birth, was trying to break free. And the poison was trying to kill it before it could. Her first shift is coming, Selena stated, her voice devoid of emotion. And because of the suppressants, her body isn't prepared. When it happens, it will likely tear her apart from the inside out. My world tilted. The air was stolen from my lungs. I felt it, clear as day. A wave of agony that wasn't my own, a silent scream that echoed through the mate bond. It was Cora's terror, her pain, her trapped wolf clawing at the walls of its cage. In that moment, the weight of my failure to protect my family, my failure to see the truth, crashed down on me. I had thought I was bringing her into my ruin, but she had been living in her own all along. With every heartbeat, my purpose sharpened into a single, terrifying point. How do we stop it? Selena's expression remained grim. We don't. We can only help her survive it. She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. And for that, she needs an anchor. A true alpha of a wild pack, one whose magic hasn't been diluted by this city. Someone strong enough to hold her soul to this earth while her body breaks and rebuilds itself. Her gaze met mine. The implication was clear. It had to be me. Truth be told, a part of me, the broken part that still wallowed in shame, wanted to run. How could I anchor her when I was so unmoored myself? But then my wolf pressed forward, a surge of pure, primal certainty. Ours to protect, ours to save, and I let it happen. In the quiet that followed, the crackle of the fire was the only sound. The weight of Selena's revelation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I was her only hope. A broken alpha was the only thing standing between my mate and a gruesome death. It was a cruel joke orchestrated by a merciless fate. There is an old place, Selena began, her voice pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. A sanctuary, hidden in the city's forgotten veins. a place where the old magic still holds some sway. It's shielded from Valerius and his hunters. We need to get her there before the final stages of the shift begin. And how do you suggest we do that? I shot back, skepticism dripping from every word. We can't walk 10 feet without tripping over one of his tamed mutts. Selena's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. That's where you come in, Onyxwood. Valerius's hunters are strong, but they are city wolves. They rely on tech, on thermal scanners, on predictable patterns. They have forgotten the old ways. She gestured around the derelict station. They hunt on the grid. We will move beneath it. Her plan was simple and insane. She had mapped a series of old, forgotten service tunnels and storm drains, a hidden circulatory system running beneath Veridia. It was a treacherous path, dark, claustrophobic, but it was our only chance. The first significant test of this new, fragile alliance. I'll need a distraction, she said, her eyes gleaming in the firelight. Something big enough to pull the patrols to the west sector, giving us a clear path east. Before I could ask, she answered, "You will be the distraction." I stared at her, the audacity of it taking my breath away. She wanted me to intentionally draw the attention of a pack of trained killers, to be the bait. As if sensing my hesitation, Cora spoke. Her voice was still weak, but now it was laced with steel. He can do it. The moment their eyes locked, mine and Cora's, something shifted. Her simple declaration wasn't just a vote of confidence, it was a thread of trust, spun in the darkness between us. She believed in me, even after her family had taught her to hate my name. In the span of a breath, her belief became a shield against my own doubt. I gave a sharp nod, my decision made. Tell me what I have to do. As the sky outside prepared for another dawn, we prepared for war. Selena laid out the routes, her finger tracing glowing lines on a datapad. Cora, despite her pain, pointed out structural weaknesses in the city grid from memory, her mind a sharp analytical weapon, and I listened, I learned. My wolf was coiled, ready. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but now it was overshadowed by something else. A fierce, burning resolve. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just a ghost haunted by the past. I was an alpha with a pack to protect. And as the wind shifted through the grates above, carrying the scent of the coming morning, I knew that whatever happened next, there was no turning back. That night, the city felt different. It was no longer a cage. It was a hunting ground, and I was the bait. Selena's plan was simple, reckless, and our only shot. While she guided Cora through the dark, forgotten tunnels beneath the city, I had one job: be loud, be messy, draw every one of Valerius's dogs to the west sector. As the wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and ozone, a feral grin. A smile touched my lips. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't hiding from my nature. I was unleashing it. My body moved on instinct. I started at the old warehouse district, a place reeking of rust and decay. I found a Valerius consolidated shipping drone and, with a satisfying roar of effort, tore its primary engine casing clean off. Alarms shrieked into the night. A beautiful, violent symphony. Red lights flashed across the wet asphalt. It was a start. Next, I moved fast, a blur of shadow and fury. The goal was to create a trail of chaos they couldn't possibly ignore. I toppled a stack of cargo containers, sent them crashing down like a child's blocks. The sound was a thunderclap that echoed through the empty streets. My wolf, silent for so long, was finally awake. It reveled in the strength, the purpose, the righteous destruction. Because of that, a feeling I hadn't felt since I was a boy surged through me. Not just anger, but a wild, exhilarating joy. I was an Onyxwood wolf, and I was reminding this city what that meant. Moments later, they came. Just as Selena predicted, 4 of them. They moved like a unit, their movements too fluid, too coordinated for mere humans. Valerius's tamed shifters, their scents were a strange mix of city smog and diluted wolf, a pale imitation of the wild magic they'd given up. Without thinking, I let out a true alpha's roar, a challenge, a declaration. It wasn't just sound, it was a physical force, a wave of dominance that slammed into them. I saw them falter. Their tamed instincts recoiled from the raw power of a pureblood. But then, something unexpected happened. One of them, a big brute with scars across his muzzle, met my gaze. And in his eyes, I didn't just see hostility. I saw a flicker of recognition. Not of me, but of my pack, of the Onyxwood scent. It was a question, a ghost of a memory from a time before Valerius. Another open loop. What did these tamed wolves remember of the world they'd lost? Before I could process it, they charged. The fight was a whirlwind of claws and snarls, a brutal dance under the neon glow. I wasn't just fighting for my life. I was fighting for time, for Cora. With every enemy I threw aside, I prayed she was getting further away, deeper into the safety of the dark. After that, 2 nights later, I found myself in a different kind of jungle. Not of concrete and steel, but of silk, smoke, and secrets. The Serpent's Coil, an exclusive high-stakes poker den hidden in the penthouse of a luxury hotel, a place where the city's elite came to bleed credits and spill secrets. My presence here was Selena's idea, a desperate gamble born from Cora's sharp mind. Our distraction had worked, but it had also drained our meager resources. We needed money, a lot of it. And this was the place to get it. I sat at the table, a ghost in my worn clothes among peacocks and tailored suits. They were the sons of the same alphas who had ruined my family. Their scents were of expensive cologne and arrogance. They looked at me with open disdain. A feral dog that had wandered into their pristine kennel. Let them. Their contempt was a shield. Cora's voice was a cool, steady whisper in the tiny earpiece I wore. Softly. The man to your left. He blinks twice when he's bluffing. The one across from you, his scent spikes with anxiety when he has a strong hand. He's overcompensating. She was my secret weapon, my eyes and ears, my brain. While my wolf fought to keep calm, to not rip the throat out of the smug bastard who kept calling me Gutter Wolf, Cora's intellect was a razor, dissecting their tells, their weaknesses. Truth be told, I had never felt anything like it. This strange, intimate partnership. Her mind and my nerve woven together across the city. The space between them burned, not with passion, but with a fierce, absolute trust. We were a pack of 2. So I played. I let them think I was a reckless amateur. I folded on good hands. I let them get cocky. I let them mock me. And then I started to win. Not just win, I dismantled them, hand after hand. Their mountains of chips slid across the velvet table towards me. Their sneers turned to disbelief, then to frustration, and finally to cold, hard fury. The air thickened with their impotent rage. The final hand was against the smuggest of them all, a young alpha named Lucian. His father had been one of my family's chief tormentors. The pot was obscene, enough to fund our escape 10 times over. I saw the tell Cora had described, the tiny flare of his nostrils. I pushed all my chips in. All in, I said, my voice ice cold, like a chip of stone. He couldn't resist. His ego wouldn't let him. He called. I laid down my cards. A full house. His face went white. The room was dead silent. I raked the mountain of chips towards me. As if pulled by a string, I leaned forward, my voice a low growl only he could hear. Tell your father. The Onyxwood pack sends its regards. What followed was a victory so sweet. It was almost painful. Leaving the Serpent's Coil with a fortune in untraceable credit chips felt like a dream. For a single, fleeting moment, I felt the ghost of my father's pride settle on my shoulders. We had struck a blow. A real one. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were fighting back. But then, reality crashed back in. As I navigated the rain-slicked streets back toward the city's depths, the elation was replaced by a cold, prickling dread. An act like that, humiliating the sons of the most powerful men in the city. It wouldn't go unanswered. We hadn't just won a poker game. We had publicly challenged their dominance. We had painted a target on our backs so large it could be seen from the moon. More importantly, every instinct I had screamed that Valerius's response wouldn't be a simple escalation of force. He was more cunning than that. He was a snake. He would come at us sideways. He would use our victory against us. How? I didn't know. And that was what scared me. The unknown. The waiting. It was a poison all its own. By the time I slipped back into the new, safer hideout Selena had secured for us, a derelict water filtration plant, Cora was waiting. The moment her eyes locked on mine, she knew. A small, brilliant smile touched her lips, and my chest ached with a feeling I refused to name. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "We did it," I corrected her, my voice softer than I intended. I placed the heavy bag of chips on the table between us. The sound was a solid, definitive thud in the quiet room. In that moment, under the low hum of the old machinery, the bond pulsed between us, clear, strong. It was a silent acknowledgement of our shared victory. But as I looked at her, seeing the flush of excitement on her cheeks, my protective instincts surged into overdrive. I had the means to get her to Selena's sanctuary now. I had the means to save her. Still, deep down, I knew the truth. This money didn't buy us freedom. It just bought us a higher class of cage. And the real fight, the one for her life, for our future, was just beginning. In the quiet that followed our victory, the weight of the money felt heavier than any burden I'd ever carried. It wasn't a solution. It was fuel. And I intended to use it to start a fire. Hiding was over. Reacting was over. From here on out, we were the hunters. Selena, with her network of shadows, knew just where to point us. A data broker named Jax. A man who operated out of the city's digital twilight and sold secrets for a price. He was our first step on the offensive. That night we moved through the rain-soaked underbelly. Not as fugitives, but as predators on the prowl. Cora walked beside me, her earlier weakness replaced by a quiet, steely resolve. The bond pulsed between us, a silent conversation of shared purpose. She felt it, clear as day. We were in this together, down to the last bloody end. Because of that, the fear that had been my constant companion began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. We found Jax in a noodle bar tucked away in a sector so grimy the neon lights seemed to bleed down the walls like weeping sores. The air was thick with the smell of sizzling synthetic protein and boiling broth. Jax was a wiry man with eyes that moved like startled birds, darting everywhere at once, a bundle of nervous energy, a rat who had survived by being quicker and smarter than the cats. "Selena said you'd be coming," he mumbled, not looking at me, his focus on a bowl of noodles. "She also said you were trouble, the kind that gets people disappeared." I dropped a single heavy credit chip on his table. It spun, catching the dim light. His eyes finally stopped darting. They locked onto it. "We need a ghost key," I said, my voice a low growl. "Something that can bypass Valerius Consolidated's primary encryption. We have a file. It needs a final push to unlock." Jax's gaze flickered from the chip to my face, then to Cora, who stood silently behind me. "That's not just trouble," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "That's a death wish. Valerius's tech is a fortress. Trying to crack it from the outside is impossible." Cora stepped forward. Her voice was calm, a stark contrast to the nervous energy radiating from Jax. "The file is already compromised from the inside," she stated. "The core securities are degrading. We don't need to break down the door. We just need someone to pick the lock." As the silence stretched, Jax stared at her, his jaw slack. He saw what I saw. Not a helpless Omega, but a brilliant mind with ice in her veins. Her world tilted, and in that moment she was not my fragile mate. She was my partner in this war. Eventually, he let out a shaky breath. He slid the chip into his pocket. "It'll cost you more than that," he said, "and it'll take time. But it can be done." He looked at me, a new, grudging respect in his eyes. "You're either the bravest wolf in this city, or the stupidest." As we left the noodle bar, the rain still falling, I knew the answer. We were both. And there was no turning back now. What followed was 2 days of agonizing, hopeful tension. We holed up in our new sanctuary, the derelict water filtration plant, while Jax's ghost key worked its magic on the ledger. Cora was the architect. Her slender fingers flew across the surface of her datapad, her mind a whirlwind of code and firewalls. I was the guardian. I stood watch, my wolf a restless sentinel, every sense tuned to the world outside. But my primary focus was on her. I watched as she worked, her brow furrowed in concentration, the glow of the screen illuminating the fierce intelligence in her eyes. With his scent in the air, a mix of petrichor and the city's rain, she seemed to draw strength from my presence. The space between them burned, not with suspicion anymore, but with a simmering, undeniable heat. A different kind of fire bloomed beneath her skin whenever I drew near, a flush of awareness that had nothing to do with her illness. The bond was a living thing now, a current of electricity that arced between us in the quiet hum of the machinery. I brought her food she didn't ask for. I draped a blanket over her shoulders when she started to tremble. Small things, instinctive things. My wolf demanded I care for her, and for once, my mind was in perfect agreement. Late on the second night, she made a breakthrough. "I'm in," she whispered, her voice filled with a breathless triumph. I was at her side in an instant, my hand resting on her shoulder. Her skin was warm, and a jolt, powerful and possessive, shot through me. The air thickened. Time stood still. On the screen, the ledger's secrets unspooled. It was worse, so much worse than we could have imagined. Not only were there names, dozens of prominent families complicit in Valerius's plot, but there were project files, code names. Chimera. Protocol Silence. It wasn't just about neutralizing Omegas. It was about experimentation, about creating a new breed of tamed, programmable shifters. The hunters he used weren't just city wolves. They were his prototypes. As the truth unraveled, a wave of nausea and pure, unadulterated rage washed over me. But as I looked at Cora, her face pale in the screen's light, I saw her strength, her courage, as if pulled by a string. I leaned down. My lips found hers. The kiss was not gentle. It was a raw, desperate collision, a culmination of all the fear, the hope, the shared danger, and the undeniable pull of the mate bond. Her hands came up to clutch my shirt, pulling me closer. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, a soft moan escaped her lips. Her wolf stirred, answering mine. And just like that, everything changed. This wasn't about a mission anymore. It was about her. Only her. As the echo of Valerius's voice faded from the broadcast, the silence that followed was 1,000 times worse. It was the silence of a city holding its breath before a storm. The silence of a trap snapping shut. Every screen, every speaker in this God's-forsaken metropolis was now painting a target on our backs. We were no longer just fugitives. We were monsters, feral terrorists, fair game for any citizen looking to be a hero. My plan to fight back, it hadn't just failed. It had backfired spectacularly, giving Valerius the very weapon he needed to destroy us. What's worse, Cora's scream tore through the quiet, a raw, serrated sound of pure agony. Her body convulsed in my arms, her skin burning with an unnatural internal fire. Her wolf, desperate and terrified, was trying to claw its way out of a poisoned cage. The scent of her pain was so thick, so overwhelming, it choked the air, making my own lungs burn. My wolf howled in my head, a desperate, frantic cry of a mate watching his other half die. Before she could move, another tremor racked her body. I pulled her tighter against me, my own muscles screaming with the effort to hold her still. "Cora, stay with me!" I yelled, my voice cracking. Without warning, Selena was there, her face a grim, hard mask. The pity I'd seen in her eyes before was gone, replaced by the cold calculation of a general watching a battle turn. "It's happening," she stated, her voice flat. "The final cascade has begun. Her body is trying to force the shift, and the poison is fighting back. It's tearing her apart." "The sanctuary," I snarled, my mind seizing on the one sliver of hope we had left. "You said you could get us there." "The sanctuary was an option when we were ghosts," she shot back, her gaze hard as flint. Now every patrol in this city is looking for an Onyxwood Alpha and a Larkspur Omega. They'll have scanners at every tunnel entrance, every checkpoint. The paths are closed to us." Her words were like stones, each one striking a new crack in my crumbling composure. No sanctuary, no escape. The city was a prison, and her own body was a torture chamber. She didn't know what scared her more, the hunters outside, or the fire consuming her from within. As her wolf stirred in a wave of pure agony, I felt its terror as if it were my own. To make things worse, I knew, deep in my bones, that Selena was right. Our victory at the poker table, our first real blow against Valerius, had been nothing more than us walking deeper into his trap. In the stillness that followed her grim pronouncement, the only sound was Cora's ragged, pained breathing. Hope, that fragile, stupid thing, had finally died. Selena knelt beside Cora, placing a hand on her forehead. For a moment, her cold demeanor softened, a flicker of genuine sorrow in her ancient eyes. She had seen this before. This story was a tragedy she had read many times. The poison Valerius used. "It's more advanced than I thought," Selena admitted, her voice a low, grim whisper. "It doesn't just suppress the wolf. It corrupts the process. It turns the miracle of the first shift into a weapon against the host." She looked at me, and I saw the truth she didn't want to say. "We don't have days, Reese. We have hours, maybe less." My chest ached. My throat was tight. Hours. The word was a death sentence. But then, as if fate demanded one final cruel twist, Selena's head snapped up. She tilted her head, listening. Her eyes narrowed. "They're here," she breathed. "Not the usual patrols. Something else. One of his projects." Before I could ask what she meant, she stood up, her movements swift and decisive. She pulled the hood of her cloak back over her face, becoming a shadow once more. "I can lead them away," she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Create a false trail. Buy you some time." "Buy us time for what?" I roared, desperation making my voice raw. "To watch her die in this sewer?" "To give you a chance," she countered, her voice like cracking ice. "A sliver of one. It's all I can offer." She looked at Cora, a long, lingering look filled with a sorrow that felt ancient. Then her gaze met mine. With finality, "Keep her heart beating, Onyxwood. That is all that matters now." With that, she was gone. She didn't make a sound. She simply melted into the shadows at the far end of the tunnel, a ghost disappearing into the dark. And we were alone. The loss of our only ally, our only guide, was a profound, physical blow. The silence she left behind was heavy, suffocating. It was just me and Cora now. Me, and the sound of her fading breaths. Me, and the impossible weight of her life in my hands. The city wanted us dead. Her body wanted her dead. And I was just one wolf, standing against it all. The hope didn't just dwindle. It was snuffed out like a candle in a hurricane. As the echo of Selena's footsteps faded, an absolute crushing despair settled over me. It was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, stealing the air from my lungs. I was alone. Utterly, completely alone with my dying mate in the guts of a city that hated us. Her thoughts spun into a vortex of pain. Her breath hitched. Her body, once warm with a simmering fire, was now cooling, the tremors weakening. She was losing the fight. I knelt beside her, my hand stroking her sweat-dampened hair. Her skin was clammy. Her scent of rain and parchment was fading, being replaced by the cold, sterile smell of defeat. My wolf, which had been a raging fire of protective instinct, was now a whimpering, grieving thing curled up in the corner of my soul. It knew what was happening. It was feeling the mate bond fray, the golden thread that connected our souls stretching thin, about to snap. In that moment, I wasn't an alpha. I wasn't a warrior. I was just a man, watching the center of his universe go dark. This was my curse, my destiny, to fail those I was meant to protect. I saw my parents' faces, their expressions of shock and betrayal as their world crumbled. I had been a boy then, powerless to stop it. And now I was an alpha, supposedly in my prime, and I was just as powerless. History was repeating itself, a cruel, mocking rhyme. I had brought her into this, my desperate bid at the auction, my reckless acts of defiance. They had all led to this, to her dying in a forgotten, filthy tunnel. I leaned my forehead against hers, a choked sob escaping my lips. A choked whisper. "I'm sorry, Cora. I'm so sorry." My voice trembled. Her name hung in the air, a ghost of a sound in the oppressive silence. Her chest ached, and I felt a phantom pain in my own. There was no plan, no hope, no way out. The goal was impossible, the game was over. Valerius had won. As the silence roared, I closed my eyes, surrendering to the crushing weight of my failure. All I could do now was hold her until the end. I was the last of the Onyxwood line, and my legacy would be to die alone in the dark, clutching the body of the mate I had failed to save. As the silence roared, I held her, waiting for the end. My world had narrowed to this single heartbreaking point. The feel of her cooling skin, the shallow hitch of her breath. My wolf was a grieving echo in the ruins of my soul. I had failed. The story of the Onyxwood pack would end here, in filth and darkness, a forgotten tragedy. But then, something shifted. A flicker. Her eyelids trembled. Her fingers, resting limply in mine, twitched. It wasn't a convulsion of pain, it was a conscious effort, a spark of defiance in a dying fire. Her wolf, even as it was being torn apart, was still fighting. For her. For us. And deep down, I knew the truth. I had been so consumed by my own failure, my own history of loss, that I had forgotten one crucial thing. She was a fighter. She had been fighting her entire life, fighting from within a gilded cage, fighting a poison that should have broken her spirit years ago. She wasn't giving up, so how could I? As if summoned by that single thought, my wolf stirred. It pushed back against the despair, not with a roar, but with a low, steady growl. A promise. It was the sound of an alpha remembering what he was, not a king, not a conqueror, a protector, her anchor. My purpose wasn't to prevent the storm, it was to hold her through it. As if fate demanded it, my perspective shifted. The crushing weight on my chest didn't disappear, but it changed. It was no longer the weight of failure. It was the weight of responsibility, and it was a weight I would carry. I had to, because she was still holding on. I looked down at her face, so pale beneath the moonlight filtering through the grates. A new resolve, cold and hard as diamond, formed in my gut. Valerius thought he had won. He thought he had broken us, scattered us like ashes. He was wrong. He hadn't accounted for the bond between mates. He hadn't accounted for a wolf who had nothing left to lose. I leaned close, my voice a raw whisper against her ear. A vow made in the heart of the abyss. A fierce whisper. I'm not letting you go, Cora. Do you hear me? I am not letting you go. With that, the climb back began. I would not let our story end here. In the quiet that followed my vow, my mind, which had been a maelstrom of grief, became unnervingly calm. The despair had burned away, leaving behind a lethal, focused clarity. Hiding was death. Running was death. Which meant there was only one path left. A path that led not away from the fire, but directly into its heart. My goal was no longer just to save her. It was to destroy him. Because of that, I realized Valerius had made a fatal mistake. He had shown his hand. His broadcast, meant to turn the city against us, had also told me exactly where he would be. And when. The Veridian Prosperity Gala. A self-congratulatory spectacle celebrating his acquisition of the Onyxwood lands. My lands. It was happening tomorrow night, at the top of Valerius Tower. The arrogance of it. It was breathtaking. He would stand before the city's elite, a conquering hero, while the last true son of the land he'd stolen died in a sewer. He felt untouchable, and that was his weakness. As the truth unraveled, a new plan began to form. It was insane, a suicide mission, but it was also perfect. It was a plan worthy of an Onyxwood wolf. I gently laid Cora down, pulling my jacket tighter around her. Her breathing was still shallow, but it was steady. She was holding on, trusting me. I would not fail her again. I pulled out my data pad. My fingers flew across the screen. The money from the poker game gave me access to the city's black markets. I wasn't looking for weapons or transport. I was looking for information. Schematics of Valerius Tower, security protocols for the gala, communication network overrides, everything I needed for a one-wolf assault. My wolf was now a coiled spring of lethal intent. It approved of this plan. This was not the desperate flight of prey. This was the calculated stalk of a predator. Valerius wanted to make a public spectacle of our defeat. Instead, I would make a public spectacle of his. I would use his own party, his own network, his own arrogance as the stage for his ruin. I would not just broadcast the ledger. I would broadcast it to his investors, his allies, and his enemies, right in the middle of his moment of ultimate triumph. As my new impossible goal took shape, a grim sense of peace settled over me. This was what I was born for. Maybe it was fate that my entire life had been stripped away, leaving me with nothing but my rage, my strength, and a mate worth dying for. It made me dangerous. It made me free. That night, the city became my hunting ground once more. With every step I took toward the gleaming, monolithic spine of Valerius Tower, the city's rhythm seemed to flow through me. The hum of the power conduits, the hiss of steam from the vents, the distant wail of sirens. I was a part of it, a shadow moving through its veins. My purpose a cold, hard stone in my chest. Cora was hidden, tucked away in the safest corner of the sewer system I could find, shielded by layers of concrete and steel. The thought of leaving her, even for a few hours, was a physical pain. The mate bond stretched between us like a taut wire, a constant, silent hum of her presence, her pain, her fight. It was my anchor and my fuel. My infiltration began not at the front door, but deep below, in the maintenance tunnels I had once helped build. The irony was not lost on me. I used the service elevators, the ventilation shafts, the forgotten pathways of the city's working class to ascend the tower of its master. My body moved on instinct, my senses on high alert. The scent of Valerius's tamed shifter guards was everywhere, a faint, sterile taint in the air. They were expecting an attack from the outside, from the bottom. They would never expect one from within. As the silence stretched, broken only by the hum of the tower's life support, my thoughts were only of Cora, With every floor I climbed, I pictured her face. I focused on the feeling of her hand in mine. This wasn't for my family's vengeance anymore. This wasn't for justice. This was for her. It was a promise. A prayer. By the time I reached the upper levels, the sound of the gala began to filter through the vents, the faint strains of orchestral music, the murmur of polite conversation, the clinking of glasses, the sounds of a world that had forgotten the wolves that prowled in its shadows. I found a service closet on the executive floor, just below the penthouse ballroom. I settled in to wait. The final pieces of my plan were in motion, the network overrides set to a timer. All I had to do was get to the penthouse, get to Cora, and be there when the world came crashing down. As her wolf stirred in my mind, a distant pulse of fear and pain, a growl rose in my throat. The time for hiding was over. The hunt was about to reach its end. In the echo of his voice, Valerius stood on a raised platform in the center of the ballroom, a king addressing his court. He was holding a microphone, his voice smooth and commanding as he spoke of prosperity, of security, of a bright new future built on my family's bones. And in a glass-walled chamber behind him, I saw her, Cora, strapped to a medical chair, pale, trembling, a trophy to be displayed. My wolf let out a silent, vicious snarl. The timer on my datapad. 1 minute left. Without thinking, I shattered the glass of the service door. I launched myself into the ballroom. Panic erupted. Screams echoed off the high ceilings. The elite, in their fine silks and jewels, scattered like frightened birds. Valerius's tamed shifter guards moved to intercept me, their faces grim. But they were too slow, too tamed. I was a force of nature, a blur of fury and desperation. My goal was singular. Her. I crashed through 2 of the guards, the impact jarring my bones. Another came at me with a silver-tipped blade, but I was faster. I disarmed him, threw him into a lavish buffet table. The space between me and Cora burned. The bond was screaming, a high-pitched keen of her agony and terror, and then just as I reached the platform, it happened. Her back arched. A sound tore from her throat that was not human. It was the sound of bones breaking, of a soul being ripped apart. The first shift was here. It was now or never. Valerius turned, his face a mask of smug triumph. "You see, Onyxwood?" he sneered. "You are too late. You cannot stop what is coming." But then, I did something he never expected. I didn't lunge for him. I didn't try to fight my way to the controls of her prison. Instead, I threw myself against the glass wall of her chamber, my hands pressing against the cold surface, my eyes locking with hers. My wolf howled, not a sound of aggression, a call, an anchor, a desperate, powerful whisper. "Cora, look at me, feel me. You are not alone. I am here." As if pulled by a string, her frantic, pain-filled eyes found mine. In that moment, as her body was being torn asunder, the timer on my datapad hit 0. Every screen in the ballroom, every public display in the city of Veridia, flickered. And then, Valerius's smug face was replaced by the cold, hard data of the ledger. Names, crimes, Project Chimera, the truth, in all its ugly glory, broadcast for the world to see. Valerius stared, his face frozen in disbelief. His empire was crumbling around him in real time. But I didn't care. All that mattered was the woman, the wolf, on the other side of the glass. I poured all my strength, all my love, all my will down the mate bond, a lifeline in the storm of her transformation. "Hold on," I begged her. "Just hold on." And as a new, powerful form began to take shape in the chamber, I knew this was my true victory, not in his ruin, but in her survival. What followed was a strange, suspended moment of quiet in the heart of the chaos. The broadcast looped on the screens, a silent testament to Valerius's crimes. The city's elite were either frozen in shock or scrambling for the exits. Valerius himself stood catatonic, a fallen king on a broken throne. Federal security forces, the real authority beyond the city's corporate guards, were already storming the tower. But none of it mattered. The glass wall to Cora's chamber hissed open, the locks fried by my network override. The scent that rolled out was not one of sickness anymore. It was the powerful, wild scent of pine forest after a storm, of clean earth, of a wolf reborn. And there she was. She lay on the floor, curled in on herself, a magnificent creature covered in fur the color of silver moonlight. Her breathing was deep and even. She was no longer trembling. The fever was gone. Her instincts surged. She lifted her head, her eyes locking on mine. They were no longer the color of a stormy sky. They were a brilliant, luminous gold. The eyes of a wolf. My wolf's eyes. Without a word, I knelt beside her, my hand reaching out, hesitating. Her head nudged against my palm, a silent invitation, the feel of her thick, soft fur under my fingers. It was the most real thing I had ever touched. She was alive. She had survived. My chest ached with a relief so profound it felt like grief. A low sound rumbled in her chest. Not a growl. A purr. Her soul answered mine. A quiet thank you that resonated through the bond. In the stillness that followed, the chaos of the world outside faded to a distant hum. There was only us. Man and wolf. Mate and mate. I stayed there, kneeling on the floor of the ruined ballroom, my hand resting on her flank. A silent guardian. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know what this new world would look like. But as I looked into her intelligent golden eyes, I knew one thing for certain. We would face it together. For the first time, I felt the true meaning of the word pack. It wasn't about bloodlines or territory. It was about this connection, this absolute, unbreakable bond, the foundation upon which we would build our new world. Come morning, months later, the air no longer tasted like failure. It tasted of pine, of damp earth, of freedom. We stood on a ridge overlooking a vast, rolling territory of green and stone. Our territory, the Onyxwood Sanctuary. The towers of Veridia were a distant, hazy line on the horizon, a bad dream we had woken from. After Valerius's fall, the truth of the ledger had sent shockwaves through the city's power structure. Many of the old families were ruined, their assets seized. And with Selena's forceful legal maneuvering, the Onyxwood lands had been restored. Not just to me, but to a new purpose. A haven for the other lost wolves, the survivors of Valerius's cruel experiments. Cora stood beside me, her hand in mine. Not as a wolf, but as the strong, brilliant woman she was always meant to be. Her scent was a constant, comforting presence, a mix of rain and parchment and the wild freedom of her wolf. The bond between us was a steady, peaceful hum, the quiet rhythm of our new life. She leaned her head on my shoulder, her stormy gray eyes watching a group of young shifters, cubs from broken bloodlines, playing in the valley below. They were learning the old ways, healing from the poison of the city. They were our pack, our future. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice soft, peaceful. "It's home," I replied, my voice thick with an emotion I no longer had to hide. I looked at her, truly looked at her. My mate, my Luna, my partner in every sense of the word. We had walked through the deepest hell together, faced down monsters, and emerged from the ashes, not just healed, but stronger. Whole. The core emotional question that had haunted me for so long, finally, had an answer. Could you build a home from the ruins of yourself? Yes. As the wind carried the sound of laughter up from the valley, I pulled her close, my lips finding hers in a soft, easy kiss. It was a kiss of promises kept, of a future earned, of a love that had not only survived the fire, but had been forged in it. Her soul answered mine. A quiet song of contentment. The echoes of ruin had finally faded. replaced by the sound of a new beginning. And she let it happen, just as I let it happen. Two souls, finally at peace. Thank you so much for watching this video. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed what you saw, we've got a whole library of other videos packed with more great content just like this waiting for you on our channel. So, why not dive into another one right now? And hey, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on our next upload, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. We'd love to have you join our community and see you in the next video. Thanks again.